Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the farm. I mentioned in a recent video that my next video was going to be about carrots and how I'm planting them these days. Carrots can be a little bit tricky for a lot of reasons. I'll explain that soon. But I wanted to show you guys kind of how I'm doing them and maybe update this video later down the road and see if this new method is actually working. So I hope you guys are along for it. Please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. It'll really help me be able to grow this channel. I appreciate it. Stay tuned to watch me grow some carrots. Alright, so you might be asking, why is growing carrots any different than anything else? Well, I'm going to walk you through step by step how to grow carrots and explain the answer to that question along the way. First things first, obviously you need to prepare a bed, which I had done. Maybe I'll insert a picture here. Basically, you want to rake it as thin and loose as the soil can possibly be, which right here my soil is extremely sandy. That works out in my benefit. Not very nutrient dense, which can be a problem, but I'll show you in a little bit kind of how I remedied that, at least to an extent. Next, you're going to want to make a spot for the seeds to go. So in my case, I either use a wide-toothed rake or I'll just use a triangle hoe or the corner of a regular hoe to make some nice lines in the soil that I can follow for the seeds to actually fall into. Now comes the fun part, laying the carrots in the soil. A lot of people will use a seeder, but I am one of those people who can't afford a seeder, so I don't have one. I do have a seeder, but it's not one of the big fancy ones, not an expensive one, and it'll just grind all of the tiny little carrot seeds to a pulp. So I literally use the old-fashioned using your hands method. I've kind of got it down a little bit to a science, maybe more of an art at this point, but you really want to lay them in there thinly. And now the thing with carrot seeds is they're so small that you don't want to press them down into the soil. You just want them to kind of sit on top, really. More on that later. Now I think would be a good time to talk about carrot seeds and what the big deal is. Why aren't they just like planting any other seed? Well, carrot seeds are extremely, extremely small, and if you remember anything from your high school geometry class, you might remember that very, very small objects have a huge percentage of their mass dedicated specifically just to surface area, and with a lot of surface area comes a lot of opportunity to lose moisture, to dry out very quickly. And that's exactly what can happen to carrot seeds, especially since you want to plant them so close to the surface of the soil that there's not a lot of soil above them to, again, retain that moisture. A lot of people have a lot of different methods on how to keep the moisture in the soil, and you guys can Google that, look it up on YouTube, but here is what I have decided to do. Once the carrot seeds are in the ground, I first want to amend the soil in some way, but also cover the seeds ever so lightly so that they don't immediately disperse when I sprinkle some water on them. So as you can see in this next little clip, I take some of the extra potting soil from a flat of kohlrabi that I just planted and just sprinkle it over the bed so that the carrot seeds, like I said, are ever so lightly covered. And then that also adds a little bit of nutrients to get these seeds started. Once the seeds are sprinkled and lightly covered, I do this with a very, very light, more sprinkly setting on my hose head. There's probably a better wand or hose situation to do this with, but essentially you want something that's light enough that it's not going to push the carrot seeds away from where you've put them, or, you know, spray them all into one little pile so you just have little bunches of carrots. But something that is going to soak into the soil so that you really get a nice even soak, because this ground is going to need to stay wet for a while. Finally, if you are using drip irrigation like I am, you're going to install that drip tape, which I did. Once you've installed your drip tape, you are ready to cover the bed. Now, why are we covering the bed? Remember when I said that carrot seeds are super small and prone to drying out very easily? That's the primary reason here for covering the bed. You want to keep it nice and moisture filled and keep the seeds from drying out until they germinate. Once they germinate, they'll be able to hold their own pretty well, but for now we need them covered. The problem with that is that once they germinate, you absolutely cannot have that bed covered or you will immediately cook your carrot seeds. Especially for me right now, it's still summer here. This is the beginning/middle of August. These are going to be winter or fall and winter carrots. And so it's still really hot right now, and if they're covered up, I'm essentially creating like a super greenhouse or a solar cooker, and that's not good. So what I've opted to do in the past is to use some of my landscape fabric and just check every few days, but that's black and absorbs a lot of the heat from the sun and really probably impedes germination. So this time around, I've decided to use poly. It's basically greenhouse plastic. It's what I use on my greenhouse. It's also what I use to make low tunnels in the fall and winter. And the cool thing about it is that it's clear. One reason why clear plastic is good is that it's just not going to hold the heat in the same way that black plastic would. Another reason is that I can see through it. So whereas I would have had to move it every couple of days to look underneath, this time I can just see right through the plastic if it is still full of moisture, if anything is germinating. I can really see what's going on without even having to move it at all. Now, carrots typically take between 5, 7, 10 days to germinate, depending on the variety, and it completely depends on the time of year and the quality of the soil as well. Therefore, I'm checking every single day. I know that by today or tomorrow or the next day, there's no way that the seeds have germinated. However, there is a chance that the soil could have potentially dried out. Luckily, I do have the drip tape under there, so that can help a lot. But if I need to, I can move the plastic off, spray the bed down again to get it nice and moist, and cover it back up before germination occurs. All right, well, it is Friday, which means it's been about 4 days. Well, this is the 4th day since we planted these carrots. And I'm gonna take a really quick look. There are 2 things I'm looking for. One is germination. I don't think I'm gonna see it yet, just because we're only on the 4th day. Carrots typically take 5 to 7 days. Rude. And the other thing I'm looking for is soil moisture. I want to make sure that the ground is still wet. And it has been raining around here. However, so like as you can see, all my other tarps are covered in water. But since this was covered with this tarp, I do want to make sure that the soil underneath is still pretty moist. As you can see, there's water on top of here because it rained last night, but you can also see the moisture collecting around where the drip tape is, which shows that it was definitely on and working last night. If we look under here, you can tell immediately that the soil is nice and moist, which makes perfect sense again since it rained last night, but because this was covered with the plastic all night and I just sprayed it down yesterday to give it a nice thorough soak. I also do want to point out that you can see under there is some germination happening, but that is not carrot seeds. That is just weed seed that was already left in the ground. Let's see if I can find some closer up to show you. Can't really find any over here. Oh, here's one. Well, I'll show you through the plastic. Yeah, so right there, yeah, that's just like grass and other seed that was already in the dirt, and that is what we do not want to take over this area. We want this to be nice and clear for when those carrots come up. This is a mistake that I've made in the past. Around day 4, I see all these little green guys coming up, and I think, oh my goodness, it's happening. But this is not a carrot leaf. If you're not sure what you're looking for, Google it. What does a germinating carrot look like? And that ain't it, Chief. So if I were to pull the tarp off now, unfortunately what would end up happening, and what has happened in the past when I made this mistake, is that I will be giving all of those lovely little weeds just a great head start. I put this tarp over them, gave them a little greenhouse situation, and now they are ready to go. So instead what we're gonna do is water this, make sure it's nice and moist, and then cover it right back up again. And what that's going to do is make it too warm, hopefully, for those weeds to exist, smother them out, and in another day or 2 or 3, we should have carrot seedlings ready to come up, and that's when we will pull the tarp off. And hopefully by then those little weed seedlings will be mostly dead and the carrots will have the head start. That is covered back up. Tomorrow is Saturday. I'll probably catch up with you then, but if not, I will see you Sunday as we check on day 6 of our carrots. All right, guys, we made it back to Monday. It's Monday morning and I'm about to check on these carrots. Now, this was kind of a weird week. It's the beginning of August and it was strangely chilly this week for the beginning of August. So I wouldn't be surprised if these carrots were taking a little bit longer than normal to germinate, but we are about to find out. All right, so at first glance, I am noticing that this tarp apparently was not hot enough to necessarily cook all of the weed seed. I am noticing some weeds, but that is okay. I would rather some weeds be allowed to survive and the carrots really thrive than for all the weeds to die and no carrots to happen. So without even moving the tarp, I can see some weeds, but What I'm going to be looking for is specifically in the trenches where I planted those carrot seeds. That'll give me a good indication of whether it's what I'm looking for or not, because it'll be in the spot where I planted the seeds, if that makes any sense. So let's go ahead and get this tarp moved out of the way, and we'll take a look at what we're working with. It's a little bit dry right here. All right, so I'm looking at the ground here underneath this tarp, and honestly, I'm a little bit lost. I have a degree in biology, I know what plants look like, and even so, I'm not 100% sure if I'm looking at carrot seedlings or just weeds, because let's face it, there are quite a few weeds. So, couple of tricks. One, I am going to insert a photo here of what a carrot seed, or what a carrot seedling rather, actually looks like. It won't look exactly like this because it's not developed yet, but that might give you a good idea of what to look for. So let's look, again, we're gonna use the trick of looking directly in the trenches where I planted the carrot seeds, because obviously that's where we should expect to see them. Now this thin little guy here looks promising to me, and to the untrained eye you might not even notice. So let me try to find a slightly bigger one. I actually see some in this trench here. These guys look like carrot seedlings to me, and again, it's kind of difficult to tell. I don't want to hurt him, but you do have these two leaves. They're not quite separated yet, but like I said, it is a lighter yellow. Let's get this grass out of the way here. And I do see quite a few of them in this trench, which, as I said, is where I would expect to see them. Again, if you were not able to spot those, don't feel bad. I should be better than I am at spotting these by now, so it really just, practice makes perfect. This is the year that we start learning carrots together, because I want to have a good winter carrot crop. So let me go sit down and grab my coffee, and I'll talk to you guys about what I think I've learned moving forward. All right, so I think a couple things that I could have done better. One, that tarp, although I stand by my decision to use a clear tarp for heat reasons, I think it would have been better to have had it better sealed to the ground. So I would have, in the future, I would use more row bags to hold it down, so that there's less airflow to dry out the soil. Another thing I would have done is, if possible, tarp that area with black tarp for a couple of weeks before planting carrot seeds in the first place, to maybe just give the weed seed like a little bit of a better chance of dying off. That wasn't really possible in this case just because of timing, so I'm gonna give myself a little bit of grace on that. What is that bug? What you guys saw with those trenches, I wouldn't do that in the future. I would make a lot more shallow of a space. Obviously I need some kind of a line to follow since I don't have a seeder, but I would definitely make it a lot more shallow, or just somehow smooth that out in the end so that, ooh, there's a big spider crawling on my window. I would somehow smooth that out a little bit better so that there's not quite as much of a trench, because I do think that probably, sorry, I keep watching this spider. I do think that probably added to my problems, those trenches. So making less of a trench situation. I do intend to add a lot more compost, a lot more organic matter. That is something that I personally am going to have to invest in and have somebody ship to me. There is a local farm that does compost in large amounts, semi near to here. It's going to be a little bit expensive, but that's the plan, is to buy from them. Again, something that just wasn't really available for me timing wise with this bed, so not gonna give myself too much crap about that. So moving forward, I am going to go water that bed, make sure it's nice and soaked, and I'm going to keep on doing that throughout the week. Luckily, like I said, it's Monday, so I have at least a few days to be out here every single day before I have like market day and things going on where I'm not here during the day. So I think we should be good. I probably won't update this particular video anymore. That'll be the end of that, but stay tuned because I will be releasing a video later on, probably a few weeks, maybe close to a month from now, with an update of kind of how that's looking, what the germination ended up being like, and maybe what I do about whatever problems arose from that. So definitely subscribe if you're not already so that you can see that when it comes out. But thank you so much for watching. Also leave a comment down below if you have any suggestions on ways to get amazing carrot germination, especially on my scale. I would love to know what you guys are doing for that. That's all for this one. I will see you guys in the next one. Until then, go grow something.
I love you too. You're such a good boy. Your face is all wet. You scruffy little thing.